Picture this. It's 1986, and you're at an illegal street race somewhere outside Atlanta. The air is thick with exhaust fumes and testosterone. Two cars line up, a primer gray Fox body Mustang that looks like it rolled out of a junkyard, and a pristine black IROC Z Camaro with chrome wheels that cost more than most people's monthly salary. The crowd's already placed their bets on the Camaro. Then something happens that nobody expects. The Mustang driver hits a switch, and suddenly a massive cloud of white vapor shoots from beneath the hood with a bone-chilling hiss. The purge valve releases nitrous oxide into the night air, and small LED lights hidden in the engine bay illuminate the vapor cloud in an eerie blue glow. The chrome fittings sparkle like jewelry under the streetlights. The Camaro driver's confidence evaporates faster than that nitrous cloud. His hand starts sweating on the steering wheel. The crowd goes silent. That rusty Mustang just announced it's packing serious chemical warfare under the hood. Or did it? What if I told you that this entire display, this automotive peacocking that would become one of the most iconic images in street racing culture, was invented by a 17-year-old kid from Georgia who figured out that winning races wasn't just about going fast. It was about getting inside your opponent's head before you even hit the gas. This is the story of how a high school student with $55 worth of plumbing parts changed street racing forever, created a multi-million-dollar aftermarket industry, and gave Hollywood one of its most memorable automotive special effects, all by inventing something that did absolutely nothing to make cars faster. To understand why a teenager's fake-out became a cultural phenomenon, we need to understand what street racing looked like in 1986. This was the golden age of the street racing arms race. The Fox body Mustang had just gotten the fuel-injected 5.0, putting 225 horsepower in the hands of anyone with $8,000 and a death wish. The IROC Z Camaro was prowling the streets with either the 305 or the legendary 350 small block. The Buick Grand National was about to drop its final terrifying form, the GNX, on an unsuspecting world. But here's the thing about street racing in the 80s. It wasn't like today where everyone's running around with laptop tuners and wideband oxygen sensors. Hell, most guys were still using carburetors. The hot setup was maybe a cam, headers, and some sticky tires. If you were serious, you had a bottle in the trunk, nitrous oxide, laughing gas, the chemical equalizer, squeeze, juice, the bottle. Call it whatever you want, but in 1986, nitrous was the ultimate wild card in street racing. For those who don't know, nitrous oxide is basically chemical supercharging. When you heat nitrous oxide to about 570 degrees Fahrenheit, which happens instantly in a combustion chamber, it breaks down into nitrogen and oxygen. That extra oxygen means you can burn more fuel, which means more power. A lot more power. We're talking about adding 50 to 300 horsepower with the push of a button. The beauty of nitrous was that it was invisible. Unlike a supercharger whining on top of your engine or a turbo with its distinctive whistle, nitrous was completely hidden. The bottle sat in the trunk, the lines ran under the car, the solenoids and jets were tucked under the hood. Unless someone knew exactly what to look for, your car appeared stock. This invisibility was nitrous's greatest tactical advantage. The typical nitrous system in 1986 cost about $1,500 for a decent setup. You needed the bottle itself, a 10-pound aluminum cylinder rated for 1,800 psi. You needed solenoids to control the flow. You needed jets to meter the nitrous and additional fuel. You needed all the lines, fittings, switches, and safety equipment. Installation was another few hundred if you didn't do it yourself. Most importantly, you needed to keep it hidden. Serious street racers would go to extreme lengths to hide their nitrous systems. They'd mount bottles inside spare tire wells. They'd run lines through frame rails. They'd hide switches in ashtrays or cigarette lighters. Some guys even wired their nitrous to activate off the horn button. Press for honk, press and hold for an extra 100 horsepower. The element of surprise was everything. But nitrous had one annoying problem that every user dealt with: line pressure. When nitrous sits in the lines between the bottle and the solenoids, especially on a hot day, it can partially vaporize. This creates inconsistent pressure when you first hit the button. The solution was to purge the lines, basically spray a small amount of nitrous through the system to clear any vapor and ensure you had pure liquid nitrous ready to go. Every serious nitrous user had a purge valve. It was purely functional, usually just a simple solenoid mounted somewhere inconspicuous that would vent a small amount of nitrous to atmosphere. Hit the purge for a second before a race, clear the lines, and you're good to go. It was maintenance, not theater. Enter our 17-year-old protagonist from suburban Atlanta. We'll call him Mike, though that's not his real name. He's asked to remain anonymous for reasons that will become obvious. Mike was a junior in high school in 1986, and like many 17-year-olds in Georgia, he was obsessed with cars. But unlike his peers who spent their time arguing about whether Ford or Chevy was better, Mike spent his time thinking about the psychology of racing. Mike didn't have money for a fast car. His daily driver was a hand-me-down 1979 Malibu with a tired 267 small block that maybe made 120 horsepower on a good day. While his friends were saving up for headers or gear swaps, Mike was studying his competition, and what he noticed would change everything. Mike was a regular at the street races that happened every Friday and Saturday night in the industrial areas outside Atlanta. These weren't organized events, just word-of-mouth gatherings where people would show up, talk shit, and race for money. Mike noticed something interesting about how races were won and lost. The actual race, the 40 seconds or so of acceleration, was only part of the equation. Half the battle was psychological. He watched guys with legitimately fast cars lose races because they psyched themselves out. He saw drivers make mistakes because they were nervous about their opponent's reputation. Most interesting to Mike was how the pre-race ritual affected the outcome: the burnout to heat the tires, the rev of the engine, the swagger of the driver. It was all theater, and that theater mattered. Mike had a friend named Carlos who ran a legitimate 11-second street car, a tubbed-out Chevelle with a built 454 and a hidden 150 shot of nitrous. Carlos never lost, but not for the reason you'd think. Sure, his car was fast, but Carlos was a master of psychological warfare. He'd show up to races in dirty clothes, acting like he'd just gotten off work. He'd complain about his car running badly. He'd even spray starting fluid into his carburetor before a race, making it backfire and pop like it was barely running. Then he'd destroy everyone. Carlos taught Mike an important lesson. Racing was 50% mechanical and 50% mental. One night in October 1986, Mike watched something that gave him his million-dollar idea. Two cars were lined up for a $1,000 grudge race. One was a built Mustang that everyone knew was fast. The other was a sleeper Regal that nobody had seen before. Right before the race, the Mustang driver's crew chief walked over and whispered something to the Regal driver. Mike was close enough to hear what he said. "Just so you know, he's spraying a 200 shot tonight." It was a complete lie. The Mustang wasn't even running nitrous. But Mike watched the Regal driver's face change. His confidence evaporated. When they lined up, the Regal driver was so focused on when the Mustang would hit the bottle that he completely botched his launch. He lost by 3 car lengths to a naturally aspirated car that was probably slower than his. That's when it clicked for Mike. What if you could create that same psychological effect, but with actual hardware? What if instead of hiding your nitrous system, you advertised it? But here's the genius part. What if you advertised a nitrous system you didn't actually have? Or even better, what if you made your small nitrous system look like a massive one? The purge valve was the key. Every nitrous car had one, but they were always hidden. What if you made the purge valve into a show? Mike spent the next 2 weeks designing what would become the first decorative nitrous purge kit. The concept was brilliantly simple. Instead of a basic solenoid venting nitrous under the car where nobody could see it, Mike created a system that turned the purge into a theatrical display. He started with a standard nitrous solenoid, about $20 from the speed shop. But instead of using standard fittings, he went to a plumbing supply store and bought chrome-plated brass fittings. These served no functional purpose other than to look expensive and professional. The chrome fittings cost him $15. The genius was in the lighting. Mike had been taking an electronics class at school, and he knew basic wiring. He bought a handful of high-intensity blue LEDs from Radio Shack. This was cutting-edge technology in 1986. LEDs were expensive and exotic then, not the commonplace lighting we know today. He wired them to activate simultaneously with the purge solenoid. When you hit the purge button, not only would nitrous spray out, but the LEDs would illuminate the vapor cloud in an eerie blue glow. The LEDs, resistors, and wiring cost another $15. But Mike's masterstroke was the mounting location. Instead of hiding the purge outlet under the car or in some obscure corner of the engine bay, he mounted it prominently on the firewall, angled up and forward so the nitrous would spray in a dramatic arc over the engine. He used a custom-bent hard line, chrome-plated of course, that looked like it belonged on a top-fuel dragster. The total cost for his prototype was $55. Mike installed the kit on his sad little Malibu, even though the car didn't actually have nitrous. He just used a small CO2 cartridge hidden behind the firewall to create the effect. The first time he tested it at a street race, the reaction was immediate and dramatic. Mike rolled up to the staging area in his primer gray Malibu that everyone knew was slow. People were already laughing. Then he popped the hood to check something, and while everyone was watching, he hit the purge. The chrome fitting erupted with white vapor, illuminated by those alien blue LEDs. The sound was visceral, a harsh hiss that cut through the noise of idling engines. The visual was even better. The vapor cloud lit from below looked like something from a science fiction movie. The laughter stopped. People started asking questions. "Yo, when did you get nitrous? How big of a shot are you running? Is that a custom kit?" Mike played it cool, neither confirming nor denying anything. He just smiled and said, "It's something I'm working on." That night, Mike didn't race anyone. He didn't have to. He'd already won something more valuable, respect and fear. People who'd dismissed his Malibu as junk were now wondering what was under the hood. Guys with actually fast cars were asking if he wanted to race, but they were also asking what he was running. The psychological seed was planted. Word spread quickly through the Atlanta street racing scene. Within a week, Mike had people approaching him about buying purge kits. These weren't slow car owners looking to fake having nitrous. These were guys with legitimate nitrous systems who wanted their purge valves to be visible and intimidating. They understood immediately what Mike had figured out. The psychological advantage of a visible purge was worth more than the element of surprise. If your opponent knew you had nitrous, they might make mistakes. They might launch too early trying to get a head start. They might shift too aggressively and miss a gear. They might simply give up before the race even started. Mike's first customer was a guy named Tommy who ran a legitimately quick third-gen Camaro with a 383 stroker and a 125 shot of nitrous. Tommy was tired of people claiming he was running more nitrous than he actually was, and he wanted a way to control the narrative. Mike built him a custom purge kit with chrome hard lines that spelled out 125 when viewed from the right angle. It was completely over the top, but that was the point. When Tommy would purge before a race, not only would opponents know he had nitrous, but they'd know exactly how much. Or at least, they'd think they knew. Psychology was everything. The second customer was even more interesting. It was Carlos, Mike's mentor in psychological warfare. Carlos didn't want the Purge kit to intimidate opponents. He wanted it for misdirection. He had Mike install 2 Purge kits on his Chevelle. One was connected to his actual nitrous system and was hidden. The other was the theatrical display kit, connected to a separate small bottle filled with CO2. Carlos would make a big show of purging the fake system before races, complete with the LED light show. Opponents would factor in the nitrous they'd seen, not knowing Carlos had a completely separate, larger system hidden in the trunk. It was psychological warfare at its finest. By December 1986, Mike was building 3 to 4 Purge kits per week out of his parents' garage. He'd refined the design, found cheaper suppliers for the chrome fittings, and even started offering different LED colors. Red for the Chevy guys, blue for the Ford guys, green for the imports that were just starting to show up. He was charging $100 per kit, making a $45 profit on each one. For a 17-year-old in 1986, he was making serious money. But the real explosion came when Mike figured out the second part of the equation. It wasn't enough to just have a visible purge. You needed to control when and how you used it. Mike started teaching his customers about purge psychology. Never purge too early, it looks desperate. Never purge too late, it looks like an afterthought. The ideal time was right after your opponent agreed to race, but before you lined up. That's when they're committed, but still have time to get nervous. Mike even developed different purge patterns for different psychological effects. A short, aggressive burst said, "I'm not messing around." A long, sustained purge said, "I've got nitrous for days." Multiple short bursts said, "My system is hair trigger and ready to go." The technical evolution of the Purge kit was fascinating. Mike's early designs were simple, just a solenoid, some chrome fittings, and LEDs. But as competition emerged and customers demanded more, the kits became increasingly elaborate. By early 1987, Mike was offering kits with multiple purge outlets that could create different spray patterns. He had kits with sequential LED lighting that would chase along the purge stream. He even developed a kit with a thermochromic fitting that would change color based on the temperature of the nitrous, creating a visual indicator of bottle pressure. The arms race in purge kit technology was ridiculous, but brilliant. One customer wanted a purge kit that would spray in a perfect spiral pattern, like a DNA helix made of nitrous. Mike spent 2 weeks designing a special nozzle with internal vanes that would spin the nitrous as it exited. Another customer wanted his purge to play a musical note. Mike figured out that by controlling the orifice size and pressure, you could make the nitrous whistle at specific frequencies. He built a kit with multiple solenoids that could play the opening notes of Dixie. It was completely absurd, but in the world of street racing, absurdity was the point. The established nitrous companies initially dismissed purge kits as a fad. NOS, Nitrous Express, and Zex were all focused on making systems that delivered more power more reliably. They saw Mike's decorative purge kits as a distraction from real performance. But they missed the point entirely. Street racing wasn't just about performance, it was about perception. And perception, as Mike had figured out, could be just as powerful as horsepower. The turning point came in March 1987 at a massive street race gathering in Commerce, Georgia. This wasn't your typical Friday night meetup. This was a planned event with over 200 cars and probably 1,000 spectators. Big money races were happening, with some grudge matches going for $5,000 or more. Mike was there with a booth selling purge kits out of the back of his truck. He'd brought 20 kits, figuring he might sell 5 or 6. He sold all 20 in the first hour and took orders for 40 more. But the real victory came during the main event, a grudge race between 2 of Atlanta's biggest names. One was running a twin-turbo small-block Corvette, the other a nitrous-fed big-block Camaro. Before the race, the Camaro driver, one of Mike's customers, did a full theatrical purge display, chrome fittings gleaming, blue LEDs turning the nitrous cloud into an ethereal light show, the purge lasting a full 5 seconds. The crowd went absolutely insane. The Corvette driver, who was probably the faster car, was visibly shaken. He'd spent $50,000 on his twin-turbo setup, and he was being upstaged by $55 worth of plumbing supplies and Radio Shack LEDs. The Camaro won. Not because of the purge kit, he would have won anyway. But the psychological damage was done. Within a month, every serious street racer in Georgia wanted a theatrical purge kit. The invisible nitrous system, which had been the gold standard for decades, was suddenly obsolete. If you had nitrous, you wanted everyone to know it. And if you didn't have nitrous, you definitely wanted everyone to think you did. Mike's innovation didn't go unnoticed by the big players. By summer 1987, NOS had released their own Super Purge kit with chrome fittings and integrated lighting. Nitrous Express came out with the Intimidator Purge system. Zex developed the Lightning Purge with strobe LEDs that would flash during the purge. Mike could have been angry about the big companies stealing his idea, but he was smart enough to know he couldn't compete with their manufacturing and distribution capabilities. Instead, he pivoted to custom work, building one-off purge kits that the big companies wouldn't touch. The craziest kit Mike ever built was for a guy from Texas who wanted to psychologically destroy his opponents before races even started. The kit had 6 separate purge outlets arranged in a circle around a hood-mounted air scoop. When activated, they would all fire simultaneously, creating a mushroom cloud of nitrous that rose 10 feet above the car. The LEDs weren't just blue, they cycled through the entire color spectrum, creating a rainbow effect in the vapor. The piece de resistance was a hidden speaker that would play the sound of a jet engine spooling up during the purge. The entire display lasted 8 seconds and used almost a pound of nitrous. It was wasteful, ridiculous, and absolutely brilliant. The guy never lost a race after installing it, though Mike suspected it had more to do with psychology than performance. The cultural impact of the decorative purge kit extended far beyond street racing. By 1988, you'd see them at car shows, where guys would purge their systems just for the crowd reaction. Import tuners, who were just beginning to experiment with nitrous, adopted purge kits as a way to bridge the gap between American muscle car culture and Japanese tuning culture. The purge became a universal language of speed, understood regardless of whether you were running a small block Chevy or a turbocharged Honda. The insurance companies and law enforcement were less enthusiastic. Visible purge kits made it impossible for street racers to claim their nitrous systems were for track use only. Cops could spot a nitrous-equipped car from 100 yards away if it had a theatrical purge kit. Insurance companies started specifically excluding coverage for cars with visible nitrous modifications. Some municipalities even passed ordinances banning the public discharge of nitrous oxide, effectively making purge kits illegal to use on the street. But the genie was out of the bottle. By 1989, decorative purge kits were a multi-million-dollar business. Mike's $55 invention had spawned an entire industry. There were companies making nothing but custom purge nozzles. Others specialized in LED systems specifically designed for nitrous applications. You could buy purge kits that would create skulls, crosses, or even letters in vapor form. The technology had evolved from Mike's simple chrome fitting to complex systems with computerized control modules and programmable display patterns. The professional racing world initially scoffed at theatrical purge kits. NHRA and IHRA racers saw them as street racing nonsense that had no place at the track. But even they couldn't ignore the marketing potential. Sponsors loved the visual impact of a purge display. Photographers could capture dramatic shots of cars venting nitrous before runs. By the early 1990s, even professional pro-mod cars were running decorative purge kits, though they'd never admit it was for show. Mike graduated high school in 1987 and went to Georgia Tech to study mechanical engineering. He kept building custom purge kits through college, using the money to pay his tuition. By the time he graduated in 1991, the decorative purge kit had become so commonplace that people forgot it had ever been any different. Young racers assumed purge kits had always been theatrical displays. They didn't know about the days when nitrous was hidden, when the purge was purely functional, when psychological warfare was conducted with whispers and lies rather than chrome and LEDs. The Hollywood connection came in 2001 with The Fast and the Furious. The film's technical advisor, Craig Lieberman, was a street racer from the 1990s who understood the cultural importance of the purge kit. When director Rob Cohen wanted a visual way to show that the cars were serious, Lieberman suggested theatrical purge displays. The iconic scene where multiple cars purge simultaneously before a race, creating a wall of illuminated vapor, was directly inspired by the street racing culture that Mike had helped create. That scene did more to cement the purge kit in popular culture than 15 years of street racing ever could. The modern purge kit is a far cry from Mike's original $55 creation. Today's kits can cost over $1,000 and include features Mike never dreamed of: wireless activation, smartphone control, programmable LED patterns, even integration with the car's ECU to automatically purge based on nitrous pressure and temperature. Some kits now use RGB LEDs that can create any color imaginable. Others have multiple stages that can create complex visual patterns. There are even purge kits that use compressed air to create the visual effect without wasting actual nitrous, though purists consider this cheating. But the core concept remains unchanged from that night in 1986 when Mike first hit his homemade purge button. It's still about psychology. It's still about intimidation. It's still about turning a functional component into a theatrical display. Every time someone at a car meet hits their purge and the crowd goes wild, they're participating in a tradition that started with a 17-year-old kid who understood that racing isn't just about going fast. It's about looking fast. The technical evolution tells its own story. Mike's original LED. Setup pulled about 2 amps and produced maybe 50 lumens of light. Today's high-intensity LED purge kits can pull 20 amps and produce 5,000 lumens, bright enough to be seen in daylight. The chrome fittings Mike bought from the plumbing store were simple brass with chrome plating that would eventually flake off. Modern purge fittings are CNC machined from billet aluminum with hard anodizing that will last forever. The solenoids have evolved from simple on-off valves to proportional controllers that can vary the purge intensity for different effects. The business model has evolved too. Mike was selling complete kits for $100 and making $45 profit. Today's high-end purge kits retail for $500 to $1,500 with margins over 60%. The market has segmented into budget kits for beginners, mid-range kits for serious enthusiasts, and premium kits for professional builders. There's even a subscription service now that sends you different purge nozzles every month so you can change your display pattern. What's remarkable is how the decorative purge kit changed the entire nitrous industry. Before Mike's invention, nitrous companies competed solely on performance, who could deliver the most power most reliably. After the purge kit revolution, they had to compete on aesthetics too. Nitrous bottles went from plain aluminum tanks to powder-coated works of art. Solenoids evolved from functional black boxes to polished billet sculptures. Even the braided lines became a fashion statement, available in every color imaginable. The entire industry became more visual, more theatrical, more focused on the show as well as the go. The safety implications were significant too. When nitrous systems were hidden, nobody knew who was running what. This led to dangerous situations where people would agree to race thinking they were evenly matched, only to discover their opponent had a 300 shot hidden in the trunk. With theatrical purge kits, everyone knew who had nitrous and roughly how much. This actually made street racing marginally safer, though safer is a relative term when you're talking about illegal racing on public roads. The psychological arms race that Mike started continues today. It's not enough to just have a purge kit anymore. You need the biggest, brightest, most elaborate display possible. There are cars now with purge systems that cost more than entire nitrous setups did in 1986. Some builders spend more time designing their purge display than they do tuning their engines. It's absurd, but it's also brilliant marketing. A spectacular purge display at a car show can make you Instagram famous overnight. The international spread of purge culture is fascinating. What started in Georgia spread across America within 2 years, but it took another decade to go global. Japanese tuners initially resisted the theatrical purge, seeing it as too American, too ostentatious. But by the late 1990s, even the most traditional Japanese tuning shops were offering decorative purge kits. European tuners adopted them even later, but when they did, they took it to another level with precision-engineered systems that looked like they belonged in a laboratory. Today you can see theatrical purge kits from Moscow to São Paulo, from Dubai to Sydney. The language and culture might be different, but the psychology is universal. The hiss of nitrous, the cloud of vapor, the glow of LEDs, it means the same thing everywhere. This car is serious. This driver means business. This race is about to get interesting. Mike never patented his decorative purge kit. He knew it was too simple, too obvious once you'd seen it, to defend as intellectual property. Instead, he took pride in being the originator, the guy who started it all with $55 and an understanding of human psychology. He went on to have a successful career as an automotive engineer, working for a major manufacturer designing intake systems. But he still builds custom purge kits on the side, one-off creations for customers who want something truly unique. The lesson of the decorative purge kit extends beyond street racing. It's about understanding that performance isn't just mechanical, it's psychological. It's about recognizing that sometimes the appearance of power is as valuable as power itself. It's about innovation coming from unexpected places, not from big companies with huge R&D budgets, but from a teenager in his parents' garage who saw an opportunity everyone else missed. It's about how a $55 solution to a psychological problem created a multi-million-dollar industry. Every time you see a car purge its nitrous system, whether in person at a car meet or on screen in a movie, remember that you're watching the legacy of a 17-year-old kid from Georgia who understood something fundamental about human nature. Fear and respect are powerful motivators. Intimidation can win races before they start. And sometimes the most powerful modifications aren't the ones that make you faster. They're the ones that make your opponent think you're faster. The theatrical purge kit didn't make cars any quicker. It didn't add a single horsepower or reduce lap times by 1/10 of a second. But it changed street racing culture forever by recognizing a simple truth. Racing isn't just about who has the fastest car, it's about who can get inside their opponent's head. And for that, $55 worth of chrome fittings and blue LEDs turned out to be worth more than all the engine modifications in the world. What do you think about the psychological aspect of racing? Have you ever seen a theatrical purge display that made you think twice about challenging someone? Drop a comment below with your best street racing psychology story. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of street racing's most unlikely innovations, make sure to subscribe. We've got more stories about the ingenious inventions that changed car culture coming up. Until next time, remember, sometimes the best performance modification is the one that happens between your opponent's ears.